Terry, you're up. Are you pretending to be frozen?
There was a moment there where I was actually going to be like, did Terry just die on camera? And can we use the footage?
The part that scared the shit out of me is I leaned forward because I'm like, dude, I think Terry's fucking frozen. And then it went from one shot to what he was actually doing, which was reaching for the screen. And I thought he was coming through.
The way Terry's eyes were just ever so slightly open, the way it was frozen, made Terry just look as close to actually dead as I could not even begin to imagine it. Oh, this is why I'm gonna have so many nightmares tonight.
Terry, are you still frozen? I can't tell what's going on. Oh, I know, I saw you blink, you asshole. You're not frozen at all.
It's like some Weekend at Bernie's type shit.
Welcome back to I'll See Myself Out. My name is Dan Lisho.
I'm Ryan Patel.
I'm Terry.
And I'm Norm Reynolds.
Consider these your only warnings.
There will be foul language.
There will be a lot of spoilers.
And there will be foul language. This week, we're going to be giving you the 12 best lines from the Indiana Jones franchise, as judged by us and in no particular order. If you think we missed a big one, you better drop it in the comments section because we want to know. We want to know.
To start this off, my quote that I've selected is "no ticket." Now, this scene starts out, they're on the blimp, they're hiding from the Germans as they're leaving Germany right after they've escaped from the castle. The Germans have come on to search for Dr. Jones Sr. and Indiana Jones. They've just fought them off, and as Indiana Jones is throwing the German off the blimp, he looks at everyone to explain what he's talking about as "no ticket."
That's also one of my favorite quotes as well. I think it's probably one of the more popular quotes in this franchise.
Well, this has been used in multiple different franchises over and over. To me, it's so strange that as soon as he throws the guy off, everyone slams up their hands with the ticket like, oh, punch me next. I don't want to get thrown off.
Yeah, I think the most memorable part of that scene outside of the right hook and the throwing out the window was there's an older woman in the foreground with that, like, whips her ticket out like she's going to get right hooked.
My favorite part of that is when he's stunned for a second. He looks like he's scrambling while he says it, and then the response is overwhelming.
One of my favorites is from The Last Crusade. Right after he has to give back the necklace or the amulet to what looks like basically Indiana Jones's role model. He kind of takes him aside and he says, "You lost today, kid, but that doesn't mean you have to like it." I think for me, that's just probably like one of the deep ingrained, almost like a defining moment for the younger version of Indiana Jones as he kind of grows up realizing, losing isn't really losing, it's just a setback.
I think it also sets him up for like almost like his mentality throughout some of the movies too. Specifically in Raiders, it kind of explains like the way he constantly gets what he's hunting for and then loses it like almost immediately, but he doesn't really seem to like lose any morale throughout the movie. Like he's always like pushing harder to come back and figure it out.
Do you find it interesting that he held on to that hat the entire time? He got that hat at that exact same point. That he's held on to that hat kind of as a reminder of that lesson?
It was almost like he modeled himself after that character.
That crook?
I don't think he was too unlike what Indiana Jones became. He was looking for an artifact, and I mean, Indiana Jones doesn't always do it for a museum.
Shortly after that, the next line that we're going to talk about is, "That belongs in a museum." And then the response is, "So do you." This is one of my favorite lines, especially the kickoff, because it shows how long he's been living this life. In addition to that, how long he's been searching for this artifact. Just draws attention to his age and how it can weigh on somebody. It really just shows how hard this life can be on someone, and it was a really character-building moment right off the hop in The Last Crusade.
The quote that I wanted to discuss that I really liked is when Indy's father, Henry, explains that they named the dog Indiana. I guess what I find kind of humorous and interesting about that is the way that so much of this movie seems to set up that Indiana has so much angst surrounding his like identity with his father, and it's almost like he'd be more willing to take the dog's name than to take his father's name, and it even still bugs him enough at that point that he's like a little bit defensive about it with the scene taking place toward the end of the movie. And it just kind of shows how stubborn he is at his age, that it's like even after like a near-death experience several times throughout the course of The Last Crusade, that like just like his father, like he's not willing to change his stance on how he feels about things. And I kind of like how it's almost like a continuation of Indiana Jones' character.
Yeah, and I also like how we know that his dad's name's not Indiana, but he's calling him Junior the whole time. The whole movie you're kind of like, what's his name? Are we gonna ever figure it out? And they just give it to you right at the end. It's just foreshadowing that something's gonna be, revealed.
I always find this one funny because this one is a little bit of an Easter egg, because Spielberg and Lucas are famous for using dogs' names as characters. Different characters throughout the entire, all their franchises are named after their pets and their dogs. My next quote is very much how I feel some days. It's right after they got onto the boat sailing back to America with the Ark of the Covenant before it gets taken away again. So Indiana Jones is sitting with Miriam. They're starting to snuggle. She's making kind of comments about how old he's getting, that you're not that old yet, but you're still getting older in years. And his comment is, it's not the years, it's the mileage. To me, this is just perfect on explaining kind of how if you live a reckless life, you're more above your age than you actually are. And I can see that pain in his eyes of, oh God, not again. And I love that part of the character. This is one thing I always ask people, and I would ask the audience as well. What is the stupidest thing or that weirdest thing that you felt that you're just now too old for that shit? Mine is trying to still play football.
Yeah, as you get older, you got to move towards the low to no contact sports.
I sit somewhere between too stubborn and too dumb to realize I'm too old for anything at this juncture.
That's either going to save you or destroy you one day.
Can you get out of your chair silently?
No. It's going to be a freak Hot Wheels accident. I'm just going to be like playing on the car mat and just slip and fucking put my back out.
So I really like that quote as well because it ties back to the previous one we discussed, which was, that belongs in a museum, so do you. Because it also sets the tone for mortality in this movie about the Holy Grail.
The next quote's also from The Last Crusade. It's when Indy and his dad are tied up together back to back on the chairs in the castle. The room catches on fire and they hop themselves over to the fireplace. Indy accidentally knocks a lever on the door and it spins around to a German war room, spins back to the room that's on fire. Indiana's dad says, our situation has not improved. Part of the no bullshit of his character and also how he's constantly seems to be pretty hard on his son. Part of the tough love character building that these two have been putting together for this movie. It also just really got me. I think it's probably my favorite moment in any of the movies, just on a humor basis.
Yeah, and it's a dry delivery too, which is, we know that's kind of where our funny bone sits. It's that they both know that the situation hasn't improved, and each of them knows that the other one knows that the situation hasn't improved. He couldn't leave it alone. He had to say something. So back to the blimp scene when they're both sitting down and Indiana Jones is talking to his father and said, we never discussed anything. We never had these heart-to-hearts or anything like that. Sean Connery goes, well, you left just when you were becoming interesting. It's such a cold line and it's really funny. It really sets the tone for Indiana Jones's character. It's like a direct line to his past, and you can see kind of what his upbringing would have been like with Sean Connery as your father, but Sean Connery's character. Obviously not the man, because I'm pretty sure he's sweet.
This scene is also fun because I think it's around the same time that he realizes him and his dad, if they're officially tunnel buddies, and it's just, wow.
This scene was one of the only scenes in the film where Indy and his father really seemed to be on the same level. This is one of the few times in the film where I kind of felt like they were just exchanging. Even though they weren't, it almost felt like they were at the same age. All right, so introducing the next quote that I want to talk about. I think it's pretty famous if you are a fan of the series at all. It's when Indiana is arriving in Berlin to save his father after being captured by the Nazis, and they get confronted by some German soldiers. And it kind of seems like after seeing his father for the first time in a long time, after his father calls him Junior several times, Indy loses it, grabs a gun, and shoots a bunch of the soldiers, and then swiftly turns to his father and says, don't call me Junior. And it seemed less like it was about his name, it was just kind of like he had a mental snap, and in that moment it was like he was just finally letting off all this pent-up steam that he had. He's definitely got some father baggage.
My last quote of Indiana Jones is in The Last Crusade. It's right when they reach the knight who's been sitting in solitude for 700 years with only a book. So when they're going in to select the Holy Grail, and Donovan tries to hunt for the actual Grail, picks the wrong one, takes a drink, and then slowly dies. The knight responds, he chose poorly. That response to me is such a very heavy burden that the guy has seen many times, or he's just so tired of the 700 years struggle of waiting for someone to replace him that he's like, okay, shit, I just need to read a new book.
I felt like after I heard you say that he was in solitude with one book for 700 years, just deep in my heart, all I wanted to do was nerd!
I was going to say, could you imagine his response if you just brought him some nudie mags? He doesn't even know those exist. He'd be like, what?
What do you think that book was? Ye old nudie mag.
That reminds me of the scene out of Robin Hood Men in Tights when Robin returns back from war and his blind servant is sitting on the toilet reading Braille porn.
So the best thing about that line that you just brought up is they implemented it into a Pepsi commercial.
While you're up, would you get me a soft drink?
You must choose. Choose wisely.
Discover the great taste of Diet Coke.
You have chosen wisely.
The next scene's from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just after Indy and Miriam get out of the little snake temple. They're sitting on the ridge with Salah. He tells them to do something and that he's going to go after the truck. Salah says, oh, how? So I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go. And to me, like, this is like the defining feature of Indiana Jones. It's like almost no planning at all, by the seat of his pants. Pretty much just favoring luck, I guess, works out more often than it doesn't.
I love this quote for that reason, for sure. He's such a wild card, and I think that's also part of what makes him as a character so exciting.
Now, Norm, you had an interesting term for that luck, right? There's like a specific luck type.
Yeah, something I've affectionately referred to as holy shit luck. Generally speaking, you're lucky in things that don't matter at all, or things that matter all of the way. But like things that like matter a little bit to like a lot, no bueno. But if you're gonna die, you're not gonna get hit by a bus, for example.
The next line we're going to talk about is from the beach scene in The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones and his father have crash landed on the beach, and they're being attacked by a second plane. This plane is equipped with fully automatic weapons, and they've got a gun with, I think, no bullets. So this is when Papa Jones takes over. There's a here, hold my beer kind of moment, except it's his briefcase in this situation. He takes his umbrella and spooks a bunch of birds, and they take off. The plane collides with the birds and takes them out, and he comes back and says, he said, I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne, that your armies be the rocks in the trees and the birds in the sky. And this was a cool moment because it was a moment that Indiana Jones got to realize that his father wasn't helpless, and all of his schooling and his scholastic training wasn't for naught. And it ended up saving his life in a moment where Indiana Jones thought he needed a bullet when all he needed was an umbrella.
I think also part of the reason why Indy was probably like so exasperated and kind of shocked in that moment was because he just spent like the last, in real time, probably would have been like 20 minutes dealing with Nazis on like motorcycles and cars and stuff. And after like basically like losing the car and not being able to deal with like that last thing, it was like his father's finesse that kind of like took it down in the end, which was like almost probably like a little bit like insulting to a degree as well. Another quote that I really liked from Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indy and Brody are kind of hanging out and drinking and chatting before Indiana sets off to find the Ark of the Covenant. Indy's packing his bag, and during the conversation, Indy kind of wryly looks over to Brody and says like, don't you know I'm a cautious fellow? And moments later like whips a loaded pistol into his luggage across the room. And I kind of feel like from an early onset, that kind of describes like a large bit of Indy's character, is just that he knows that he's not like the most cautious person. And even despite being extremely intelligent and like extremely knowledgeable, is still kind of like reckless and kind of coy about being reckless.
What do you say we rate the franchise?
I give this 11 fucking Anubis rides out of 12 Harrelsons. Ooh, yeah.
That was the dirtiest thing you've ever said.
I feel awkward.
I'm thinking about you, Dan.
I'm going to give this 7 out of 8 fireplace spins.
I'm going to give this 97 out of 100 dead seagulls hitting a plane.
I'm going to give this entire franchise a possible 8 out of 10 absent father figures.
I'd like to thank Glenn Fiddick for making this podcast hella good. They didn't sponsor us, but they did make it better.
If there's anything that you should be looking forward to at least as much, if not more, than being able to go outside, see your loved ones, or not die from a horrible virus, it probably should be going out to Broad Street Espresso and getting your first cup of coffee after the Iron Curtain of quarantine lifts. So thanks for sponsoring us.
We'd also like to thank our other sponsor, Man Antler. They normally supply us some double, triple, extra double tasty beer, and you can go visit them in Bowmanville at hopefully when this whole thing is over, or you can order online and they deliver all over Ontario.
How many tasties is that? That's like, I mean,
7.
If we use bed mass, can we determine how many tasties?
Ryan, we don't have time to count that high, okay? Let's just move on.
Double, triple, extra double tasty. If you know how many tasties that is, let us know in the comments below. All you people at home, have a quarantini on us.
That's it for this week. Next week, you can catch us talking about the critically acclaimed movie, Boondock Saints. If you guys like what you saw, hit that like button, knock the subscribe button to see our stuff more often. If you think we left a line out, please do drop it in the comments because we'd love to debate you on it. Or maybe, congratulate you on doing a good job. It's really anybody's game.
And let's chat. Let's start up a chat, guys. Let's talk about this. We really love this franchise, so we want to chat. We want to talk with you. Let's start it up. Let's get weird. Let's hop on the good foot and talk about some Indiana.
I was gonna say, I mean, I think if you put lightly fucked or even like dick scented, you're only gonna get like a small margin of what you're setting out to get.
Hey, you might get more. It depends on how much scent it is there.
There's probably, and there's got to be at least one person out there who's like, like dick scented. I wonder what that dick scent is, because there's like a generic like scent for things. It makes you wonder like what's the is my dick scent weird compared to the generic dick scent? Did people have a different dick scent?
Like no-name dick scent?
Yeah, exactly.
Versus like Charmin's dick scent?
Yeah, like PC dick scent brand, or like No Name, or what are some other off brands?
Kleenex, dick scented Kleenex.
You're one of those guys who scratches his nuts and gives her a good sniff, aren't you?
Sorry, I was still processing dick scented Kleenex. Can you even begin to imagine not knowing that that's a thing, going to somebody's house who has them and lining up for like a fucking sneeze and just grabbing a fistful of Kleenex, not knowing what's coming and just blowing straight into it? There's a joke in there somewhere.